Well, it's anarchy in New York right now as we've got the city council absolutely split down the middle, Democrat versus Democrat, of course. They're all going after each other because there are homeless on the streets. A whole ton of them are migrants, illegal immigrants who have gone to New York. They have no place to go. The mayor has no options. He's thinking of building a tent city in Central Park. What is this, Hooverville time again? We got to get a handle on this, so let's talk to a man who used to write for the New York Post on a regular basis. He's our favorite exiled New Yorker, David Marcus. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is delicious to see, actually. For the rest of us and the rest of the country, we're watching this saying, well, this is what you voted for. Enjoy. How are we wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think what's extra sweet about this is what you voted for, is that when all of these cities, including New York, decided to declare that they were sanctuary cities, did they know what that meant? I mean,
it's like,
you know,
you do realize what sanctuary means, right?
so yeah, it's a mess. And look, you can't help but feel some Schadenfreude when guys like Mark Levine, who's on the city council, is tweeting, Joe Biden needs to do something about the border. It's like, Joe Biden thinks it's fine, man.
Yeah.
Secretary Mayorkas says this is all under control. So what are you talking about? Clearly it's a mess. Clearly the situation at the Roosevelt Hotel is horrible. You said Hoovervilles. I already called them Bidenvilles. They already exist
Here you go.
across America. And look, Eric Adams does not want that in Central Park. Central Park is too iconic. The symbolism of that would be devastating, but he might run out of options.
I saw City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino was on Fox News earlier this morning for like 20 minutes from the street, a live hit, talking about this nightmare here. Clearly, she's, I think, running for mayor next time around. But this is a Democrat appearing on Fox News screaming about the inept government that they're dealing with right now. Is this one of those cases where if she were in any other place, she'd probably be a Republican, but because she's in New York, she's just a Democrat because that's the default position?
That could be the case, but I've got to tell you, I'm old enough to remember. I remember sitting at Cafe Reggio on McDougal Street the night that Rudy Giuliani won and became mayor the first time, which was just shocking that you'd have a Republican mayor. It was insane, right?
Yeah.
How did that happen? It happened because things got so bad. I mean, anybody who remembers Times Square from that period, it was nothing but porn theater. I mean, it was horrible. And New York can reach a tipping point where New Yorkers will say, we need a republic, we need a Joe Borelli, right? We need somebody who's actually going to get the job done, regardless of city council. Even 5 years ago, I would have said we're nowhere near that. I'm not sure that we're that far away from it anymore.
Yeah, I remember that time. I remember how bad it was under Dinkins. I lived in New York at that time too. And you're absolutely right. In fact, same thing in Los Angeles. Dick Reardon was the Republican mayor of Los Angeles at the same time. Things have to get so bad that people will even vote for a Republican. And so, yeah, maybe we're at that point in New York. Although, again, this is where the Trump factor comes in. I mean, back then, if you were voting for a Republican, it was the party of George Bush. And, I could see people in New York and LA doing for that. There's something about Trump that really does change the equation there, I would think.
I think that's right, but I think in general, New York Republicans, who have been pretty successful of late, I mean, they're really the 5 seats that we won in New York, or the Republicans won in New York in the last midterm is why Kevin McCarthy is speaker, right? I mean, they've managed to walk a line with Trump, and New Yorkers understand Trump in a way that the rest of the country doesn't. New Yorkers kind of get Trump, and I don't think that he hangs in their craw quite the same way. So I think people like Maliotakis and Borelli and other talented Republicans in New York are able to thread that needle.
So what you're saying is some of the things that other people in the country, don't like about Donald Trump, abrasiveness, sometimes obnoxious, saying things that are inappropriate. In New York, it's like, well, yeah, he's a New Yorker, of course. That's what he does.
Yeah, you get it, right? I mean, one of the very first columns I ever wrote after Trump became president was trying to explain this outer borough hyperbole that he uses, right? Like, Nobody in the outer boroughs in Brooklyn or Queens says this is a very good slice of pizza. This is the best slice of pizza I've ever had. Everybody, And so we get it in a way that I think is a little different than the rest of the country.
If I could shift gears for you, David, because you shifted gears a little bit with your latest column over at Human Events. It doesn't focus on electoral politics. It's more sort of a cultural malaise that we're feeling right now. I think you tapped into something that we're all experiencing, and it resonates with us. As you put it, the insidious decline of American services and comforts. In other words, wherever we go right now, whether it's dealing with an airline or dealing with a movie theater or dealing with a coffee shop, we're just, everything has eroded a little bit. Is this a post-COVID phenomenon, or is it something bigger than that?
I think COVID certainly was an accelerant, but I do think it's bigger than that. And I think that the focus is almost always on working class or middle class luxury. And this often will have to do with climate change, right? Like one example that's not obvious of this that I gave was the wood fire pizza restaurants in New York,
Yeah.
right? When I found out about that story that they wanted to shut those things down, my first thought was, a Grimaldi's or a John's of Bleecker is someplace where a couple can get, an appetizer, a pie, a couple glasses of wine, and get out of there for under $100 with a tablecloth, right?
Yeah.
The next level up, you're in $175, $200 range, and it's always this, it's always the public swimming pool, or it's always that thing, that working class people take advantage of. That's up on the chopping block. It's never John Kerry's private jet.
Yeah. There's also another aspect of this, I think, where, even something as mundane and routine and normal as going to a drugstore. If you're in a major city right now and you're going into a Walgreens or a CVS, or in New York, one of the Dwayne Reeds that appear on every other block, in the back of your mind, you're thinking there could be a guy right next to me clearing the shelves into his garbage bag, and security's not going to do anything about it. And it's very unnerving to know that there is a palpable criminal element about to invade your space while you're just trying to get a thing of deodorant.
No, set aside, don't set aside personal safety. Obviously, that's a real concern. But even if that doesn't happen to you, it sucks walking around the pharmacy and you can't pick up the toothpaste to look at the back of it, right? You can't touch the bar of soap without like getting some attendant to come over if you can find them. That was something visceral that I felt when I left New York, because it had already become like that. And when I walk into a CVS in West Virginia and there's very little of that, you feel that.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
And as you point out, the alternative is, listen, you can have a beautiful time in the comfort of your own home. Get a beautiful widescreen television, streaming services, all the movies at your fingertips, which is true, but we're a social creature. It's keeping us isolated from each other.
Yeah, and that is where it does go back to COVID a little bit, because one of the things I write in the column is that, intentionally or not, COVID became this experiment to see, like, can most people just stay home? Like, can society function that way? And I think, rather unfortunately, the answer was pretty much yes. And almost worse, I would say, companies and corporations started to realize that it was really good for their bottom line.
Yeah.
That it was much cheaper than having a brick and mortar, that there was much less liability, that they were making a lot of money off of people just sitting in their house. And
Yeah.
I think we do need to come up with some solutions. Church would be a good one, but
We'll start there, yeah.
yeah.
David Marcus, always thought-provoking. And are those unfiltered, by the way, real fast?
No.
You got to filter. Okay. There's more to come on O'Connor's Side.